Yannick, that's so. I so appreciate you pick that point because I really found today's education, we teach people to work, then you relax, then you find a hobby. No, in a modern society, you should find a career that is your passion, your interest, and also provides you a living. You do what your hobby is. Your hobby is your career. You are good at that, and learning is not learning to do for something later. You learn now. You learn by doing. You learn to do. So the whole thing is a whole capacity. So for me, my life really is a hobby. I really, people pay me. I'm happy that I'm paid to live like a life like this. But like talking to you, thinking about this is just exciting.
Why knowledge matters. Welcome. I'm Yannick, your host, and now joining me, Professor Yong Zhao. Professor Yong Zhao is a Foundation Distinguished Professor in the School of Education at the University of Kansas and a Professor in Educational Leadership at the Faculty of Education, University of Melbourne in Australia. He previously served as the Presidential Chair, Associate Dean and Director of the Institute for Global and Online Education in the College of Education, University of Oregon, where he was also a professor in the Department of Educational Measurement, Policy and Leadership. Prior to Oregon, Yong Zhao was University Distinguished Professor at the College of Education, Michigan State University, where he also served as the founding director at the Center for Teaching and Technology, executive director of the Confucius Institute, as well as the U.S.-China Center for Research on Educational Excellence. He is an elected member of the National Academy of Education and a fellow of the International Academy of Education. Yong Zhao also received numerous awards, including the Early Career Award for the American Educational Research Association, Outstanding Public Educator from Horace Mann League of USA, and so on. Welcome, Professor Yong Zhao, on the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Yannick, for having me. It's great to be here.
It's wonderful. I have read your book, Improbable Probabilities. What an inspiring story. As a man who grew up in the 80s, late 80s, and I was truly inspired. But first, just let's start and give us in one sentence, or tell us in one sentence, who Yong Zhao is.
Well, I don't know. That's a great question. Yong Zhao is an ordinary person who is trying to overcome the probabilities he was born with.
That is beautiful. What's on an ordinary day of yours the highlight of your day?
Well, it's very simple. I talk to a lot of people. I read and I write. I teach, I advise. That's today. So I would say my ordinary day is like a regular professor. You have a lot of responsibilities in doing research, doing service, advising, and teaching.
What was your motivation to write Improbable Probability?
Well, I think it really started with my thinking about how do you help poor people, young people, people from less advantageous families. How do you help them change their life? Because everybody, when you are born, wherever you're born, whatever family you're born, some people are born 5 minutes more than you are born with. The birth itself is not fair. Not every child is delivered with the same equal opportunity. So that's what I call their probabilities. And many people, especially people from less income, less opportunity, live with that. They are told by the upper class, the wealthy, to say, well, there's not much you can do. You cannot go to a private, go to a great college, private education. But I said, well, everybody has a chance to challenge that probability. So I just said, I want to reflect my life. I have challenged that probability. It's improbable, but it can be overcome. So I want to share that story with many people.
It was so inspiring, and what really came through most throughout the reading was determination, optimism, vision, obstacles, trust in your instincts. So let's walk us through to these really pillars, I would say, which ultimately led to the great scholar that we know today. You're an outstanding, brilliant man who grew up in Sichuan province in China in a very troubling time in the 60s. You have witnessed poverty. You yourself, you weren't even admitted to the university because they felt like you are physically not fit. You were malnourished. It's an incredible story. So it was so touching. So please give us some sense of why determination, optimism, vision, obstacle, trust in your instincts was pivotal in order for us now to have really your gift, because what you are now doing, obviously, you truly revealed your gift, and we are coming later in the talk to this a little bit more specifically.
Well, Yannick, I really believe every human being has that determination, has that ability, has that confidence. What they need is a vision to say, I can get out of this. I can do more. There was no way for me in the 1960s to imagine a life as a scholar. I can be a better farmer. I never thought about what I would become, but I was just curious to try to do what was presented to me. I think that's very important in our today's life. No matter where you're born, no matter what condition you're in, find the best you can and achieve the best in that condition. Do not try to daydream the impossible, but really work on the probable in your life at that moment. I think everybody can, but what we need is that kind of determination to say, I am able to do something. Everybody, no matter where you are, there's something good to life. Take advantage of that good and believe in that good and do something about that.
To you, and it came to the book, you really, and tell us how you somehow, because when you were obviously a kid, you didn't realize that, I believe, but to you too, failure is really a stepping stone to really greatness. You also actually wrote a book on greatness,
Well, I think failure, in my life, it's very hard to say I have failures. I think they're all necessary steps, to do something. I'm so happy, Yannick, for example, you're doing this podcast. I'm sure you have some podcast episodes that didn't work. Well, you just get better. I think human life is not a singular way, singular path towards so-called great success. It is a life of ups and downs. It's winding. So there's no failure if you learn from it. But there are failures if you stop with it. You say, okay, I'm done with that. I've stopped. So that's real failure. And really bigger failures are the one that makes you lose confidence, makes you lose hope. So none of these are true failures, but they are, of course, from the ordinary perspective, failures because they did not work. In my life, there are many, many things I've tried that did not work. Many, many things I've tried. But they never stopped me. They give me more confidence. They give me new ways to think. So I think that's a very interesting topic. People talk about failure. You don't really have failures. They're just a mistake, or a way that you can say, okay, let's learn something from that.
Coffee or tea? What's your morning like? Tell me.
Well, I used to drink a lot of tea in China. Then I started coffee. Now I'm back to tea again. So I think I do coffee and tea. Both are reasonable, but both they have very interesting way of drinking, right? So I don't know where you are born, but anyway, I like both. But now today I'm drinking red tea.
Fantastic. You know, that's always interesting. But it's the same with my Chinese friend. I have so many Chinese friends, outstanding human beings, and they too, coffee, tea. So it's really a global world, as you also yourself, you consider yourself a global citizen, and it's so obvious. And I'm so grateful to you to reveal your gift and to be truly a gift to myself and the world. You know, we really need that. You know, people with optimism like you, I can feel that the way you talk. You know, we can hear this in your voice. So it's wonderful. What does a culture feel about itself where, at least perceived, fundamental values such as democracy, freedom of speech are at best taken for granted or at worst being under attack? What's the role of education?
Thank you for asking such a fundamental question. I've been thinking a lot. I think right now, at this moment, democracy is under attack everywhere. Everywhere. I think we are lucky to be here to enjoy at least the freedom of speech and democracy. I think education plays a major role. Like I said, a people can be governed. You know, ignorant people can be governed. But democracy means not to be governed. Democracy means we have to govern ourselves, the people. So when we complain about Congress, when we complain about Republicans, Democrats, we complain about politicians, we need to complain about voters. And voters come out of schools. Politicians come out of schools too. So I think education plays a big role. In writing this book, I'm really trying to write about people. Schools have been too much focused on reading and math. Recently, that's a huge mistake in American education. We should be educating the citizen, the people, the informed, the innovative, the creative. We need to change. We need to think about the moral values of living in a democracy. So education, schools have to pay attention to that.
And it's also so important because you mentioned also standardized testing, what it actually does. And, you know, I met so many Chinese friends all over the world. And what they are telling me about the testing in order to get to university. And once they're in university in China or abroad, it's a cakewalk. But what they have to endure as a human being, on one hand, of course, again, I believe also truly, and that's why you resonate so much, is every adversity to some extent has its equal opportunity, okay? But here, I truly think it's taken too far, at too high cost, in my view.
I think testing is truly now destroying human beings. Because you look at testing in China, East Asian countries, even in the US, we are really applying this to such a high level. We're limiting children from the best families, their life. We are limiting their possibilities. Children today with artificial intelligence, with technology, can do a lot more, but they're limited. Our education opportunities have been limited. Teachers' freedom have been limited. Teachers have been demoralized. I think, testing needs to stop. If possible, we need to stop testing. And also a person's ability can never be truly measured by a test, by a standardized test. It is impossible to test a person's capacity, the optimism, like you're mentioning, the courage to do something. You can't test those things. And testing often drives the confidence out of children, drives creativity out of children. What we need to have are independent, rational, thinking people who are creative.
That is fantastic. And, I also saw this, and you are the perfect example for, the luck factor. And actually, you also cited it by Richard Wiseman, the luck factor. And we can actually see this, a certain attitude that people who feel like lucky in life have, for example, as you just said, turning opportunities, adversity into opportunities, and so on. But one thing also I found so interesting for yourself and where you came from is you always saw the opportunity and it was always forward. You're always forward. How comes that you had this innate ability somehow? who inspired you? Was it your father, your mother? Who was it? For given the circumstances you were in, give us a taste how this is. I cannot imagine, how this might have played out, because I was very fortunate. I came from a very, I had a wonderful family, a beautiful place. We never had struggles with food and so on. This is really serious.
Well, Yannick, I think you actually mentioned something really important, the idea of luck. It's like everybody is presented with a lot of random opportunities. Whether you turn that opportunity into something for you to do it, that is beautiful luck. In many ways, like you're running the podcast, this is you choosing your luck. Everybody could do it. How come you did it? So for me, when I was a young boy in my village, it is for me, reading, for example, creates a sanctuary for me. So in the whole village, no other boys was interested. I was not good at any of the farming work. I discovered something really interesting. I could read and recite stories to the old people, old women. I mean, they were home. They were not doing much work. It's surprising. They were ignorant. They did not go to school, but they loved to hear my story. I said, that's really rewarding. So you can always find something. Human beings actually are interested in outside world. Most people do not live there. So from newspapers I picked up on the floor, my father's noodle shop, I was able to find stories, and I find them, some people like to listen to me. So that's a way to elevate my status in the village, right? Some boys, they like to listen to my stories. It's just really interesting. Always do something interesting, do something for others. That's another thing I've been advocating. Your luck comes, you're doing something for others. You cannot just be doing something for yourself. You have to do something for others. You create value for other people.
And it's also a very good point, because what you're also basically indirectly saying is luck is also created to a big extent. Of course, again, probabilities, but you create those probabilities, like those luck that you ultimately attract. And you can only do so by ultimately taking action. And one thing what you're saying there was very interesting, because when I was 15, when I was a little boy, I was always interested in listening to people. And so I told my father, when I was 15, I still can remember, it was in our garden, and it's beautiful, surrounded in the Alps. And so I told him, I want to interview people. I just love it. And he's told me, no one will be interested. I mean, no one cares, right? But I always had this curiosity, right? So, and what you just said, that's something that's wonderful. A man who truly found his gift does not need a hobby, and that's you. Explain. And I love that. I love that. Because this truly is what is living, right? Learning is living, and living is learning. And you're the best example. So I love it. Please walk us through why a man like you doesn't need a hobby.
Yannick, that's so I so appreciate you pick that point, because I really found today's education, we teach people to work, then you relax, then you find a hobby. No, in a modern society, you should find a career that is your passion, your interest, and also provides you a living. You do what your hobby is. Your hobby is your career. You are good at that. And learning is not learning to do for something later. You learn now, you learn by doing, you learn to do. So the whole thing is a whole capacity. So for me, my life really is a hobby. I really, people pay me. I'm happy that I'm paid to live like a life like this. But like talking to you, thinking about this is just exciting. I was just reading an old book. It's called the Transformation of the School. It's written by Larry Kremen. Was published in 1960s. Was talking about progressivism in American education. It's a history book. It's a fabulous book about Americans' debate and argument about progressivism since the 1800s to the 1950s. I just get fascinated by this, because now today American education is faced with the same debate again. It's same debate, how much should be about learning by doing, how much should be hard work, how much should be like doing reading and math. So for me, it just fascinates me. I love this, reading this book. I get online, get on YouTube, I watch, podcast. It just learning just drives you to do it. So I'm encouraging people, you should always find something that you are passionate about and you are good at to do. That is very important. And today, it's almost impossible for you not to find something you are interested in doing. Like today, how many jobs, if you can create new jobs. But as long as you take the opportunity to do that, I really want people not to be told by others. Like your father, I wish he said, give it a try. Who knows? Somebody might want to do that. You would have done something different. You could give up later, but at that time, it doesn't cost much. We live such a long life. You just explore something. I think it will be just quite valuable.
I just have a question to the gift, because I'm 100% convinced, I have no doubt, because I just feel that you're also, your wife would say, I have the most wonderful, the best possible husband I could ever imagine. Now, I just want to give us a taste. You living your gift, your passion. Is there sometimes you feel like you are neglecting the relationship with your wife and, of course, with your 2 sons, right?
I don't think so. But I think this is actually interesting. I was talking to my wife about it. I said, I'm not a great genius, so I can take care of you. I still want to hang out with you, still spend time. I have a son and a daughter, but I don't think my relationship with them is as some other ultra creative people. I'm not that level. So I think I have a very good relationship with my wife and my children. Very good, actually. So my wife and I have been living together, God, for over 30 years. And even in the last few years, our children are all gone, so we are still very good. So I don't think I'm that level, because every day we walk, we talk, so it's very nice. But I think there is something, however, it takes a different kind of woman to appreciate this. Like, for example, families have different styles. I think I need my space to think, to read, to talk, to write, to travel, and my wife respects that. I think that's very important she accepts that.
That is wonderful. No, of course, but I think you're also lucky, because your whole life was about education, right? And so you also came across, how to best engage in a relationship with human beings, whereas someone who might be, let's say, Elon Musk, I don't know how his relationship, obviously, with his wife and so on. But of course, it depends on the type, on the nature of the person you are, obviously. Where do you see the biggest, does the perceived lack of social cohesion, because this personally worries me to a great extent, worry you? How can education address it? I just give you a small example. When you just look at the divorce rate, for example, in my country, for example, in Switzerland, over 50%, okay? So if we assume, and I still assume, that the basic unit, in order to keep a society together and to somehow find a common ground, always starts at the family level, right? So if it's already there, disintegrating, how can we ever expect to have somehow social cohesion? Also, in addition, we are very fragmented in terms of, basic values, like whereupon we stand on, such as democracy, for example, right? So how give us your take on this, and how can education address it?
Well, Yannick, I think I'm glad you're from Switzerland. I was just there, a while back. So you had a great education philosopher, Pestalozzi. That's Switzerland. That's very Swiss. That's had a great idea about children, about education, and I think Switzerland actually, if you look at only divorce rate, might be a problem. But also if you look at the human transformation, I am not sure human beings are the smartest. So human beings always commit mistakes that collapse their civilization. You know why great countries collapse? Because people are not able to see rationally what the front might be. You know, like for example, right now, the wars in Hamas and Israel, and Ukraine and Russia, and now India and Pakistan, and all this. Why do we spend so much more money killing each other or pretend to kill each other than educating and providing food to other people? It's like almost illogical, right? That's human beings. Human beings are very, I think, in many regards, quite stupid in that regard. They're not. I mean, look at all these fights, and 15 years ago, everybody was happy with each other. Now suddenly we're not. Switzerland has been smart, trying to be neutral for all the time. Most of the time. But think about it. So I think now, what we need are really two things in education. Number one is that if everybody is able to make a living, I mean a happy, thriving living through education, which I think they can. Education can help them. Second thing, if everybody learns to not talk about competing, but learning to contribute to other people's life. If you make a living by contributing to other people's life, we have a pretty good society. I'm like, look, what you are doing, I'm doing, we're trying to contribute to other people's life. We're not trying to kick other people off the stage. But traditional education teaches people to compete. So you have a higher ranks, you go to this better college. But what education needs to learn is to say, you learn to contribute. And through contribution, you realize your passion, you realize your talent. I really feel, Yannick, you are such a talented host. You invite out answers really without any effort. You think very well. So I love talking to you because I'm just feel like there's so much I want to share with you. But you are using that talent to contribute to other people's life. So that's where in the two things.
I just have one other question because I'm aware of the time and we could spend so much longer. I'm really touched by everything you said, and I'm so grateful to have you, here on the show and really to share your wisdom and knowledge and your nature. You're truly a humanist, and I can truly feel how passionate you are about simply being alive. How grateful you are, the gratitude that you emanate to people, and especially also to our youth. We need hope, and we cannot somehow indulge more and more in pessimism, because then what's the point, right? Because then ultimately it's literally we are facing a reality where we realize that, well, now we are starting worshipping almost death, right? That somehow, and so that's why it's so important. So what's education's true purpose according to you in an ideal world, but also given the fact that we have these constrained circumstances, right? And I don't think that this has to be necessarily be opposing at all. It can be integrated, in my view. What's your take on that?
Well, I mean, I think, it's right now, I think we talk about the professional organized learning as education, and also education as somehow offered by other people to you. So I really like to treat education is your education. So I don't want to argue and debate with that. It's you go to school, you get your education. You travel you get your education. I think very often, traditionally, we've been talking about education is designed by someone for you. So you go to school, you get an education. That education doesn't exist. It's what you can drive your education. Your life is education. So that's my
Beautiful.
answer. Thank you.
Last question. What makes you feel alive?
Well, thinking, chatting with you, like talking to people. Whenever I feel like I'm talking about ideas, I feel alive. I feel great. So this is a wonderful episode. Thank you, Yannick. I have to go, and this is just lovely. We should talk more. Thank you.
Absolutely. I will send you again. I hopefully you will agree to talk more again. Professor Yong Zhao, such a pleasure. Thank you so much for giving truly a gift to me and truly to the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yong Zhao. That's why knowledge matters. Make your life a masterpiece. Visit now programs.d-ykm.com.